Now we are entering into the main territory of grants management. So I'll give you a small intro on grants management and its subtopics, and then we'll go in detail also. Okay, so as it's written here, Fusion Grants Management is basically used to manage the funds which have been received from the sponsors to complete the project within an award, right? So what does that mean? Is basically what we were talking about from past 10 minutes is someone will give you fund and you receive the money and you complete a project on ground, right? So the main thing which I want to highlight again here is the money which is received is not for any benefit who is giving the money, and that is why it is called as fund. Fund in general term is the grant given by some organization or some individual or people like you and me as well. So you and me also can go to some websites of United Nations and donate some 100, 200 rupees or 500 or 1000 or whatever being based on the capabilities of the individual, right? That's the fund or donation which you are giving because there is some problem in the world, maybe in COVID situation when someone was asking that, give the money to PM Cares fund. So all those kind is a fund donation which you are giving, through which the government agencies or NGOs or any kind of non-profit organizations work with the execution partners and help the needy, right? That's what is grants management is all about. It is just to take care of the funds received, execute the project, do billing and revenue, right? So all these kind of stuff at a high level is done in the grants management. Then on the parts of grants management, so as you can see, we have something called award management, which is on the right side. So we create the awards, which is, I'm again repeating, the agreement with the sponsor. Then based on the funds received, we create the budgeting. So let's say if the fund given by the sponsor is 1 million, we do the budgeting of that 1 million, or we can decide, let's say funds are received by 1 million, but we want to do budgeting or we want to spend only 500,000, right? So 500,000 is the budget value, while the fund and the award creation is done for 1 million. That also can be possible. Then we have something called cost management and control. So once you do budgeting based on system functionality, system will check that this sponsor has given you this much fund and hence you cannot incur the cost against a project. You cannot buy items more than whatever fund you have received, right? So that is called as cost control. And then we have billing and revenue, where depending on the cost reimbursement billing or depending on the milestone based billing, we do the billing to the customer or the sponsor, and then the revenue is recognized for whatever the work is done against the project. And then Grant Management Cloud comes with some insights and performances. So we have something called performance management. We have pretty dashboards which will give basically the administrators clear picture if you are overspending, if you are underspending, how the project is going on, what is the comparison between the revenue, invoice, budget, everything. Then we have some OTBI capabilities. All these comes under the performance reporting part, which is the last one. Right, so these are the few basic details on the grants management side. Moving on, this is just a small overview of grants management. So basically, grants management will work as the first point says, to complete the post-award process. So if you have decided that you will be executing this project and you have got the funds already, then you will create an award, right? So it's a post-award process. Post-award, you create the agreement, you execute the project, you do billing, you do revenue and close it, right? All the negotiations which you do are not part of grants management. So you might be reaching out to multiple sponsors, multiple big governments organizations are for asking the fund, right? That give us fund, we need to execute something in Ukraine, as an example. So that part where people will go to multiple donors, that's out of system, right? That might be handled in Salesforce or Oracle CX Cloud, where you can keep the track of opportunities that you have reached out to 10 different sponsors and one of them has given you the fund. So when you know that out of 10 sponsors who is giving the fund, then you will create an award against that sponsor, right? So that is called as post-award process, and then you execute the project, cost, billing, and then close it, right? So that is one thing. Then one more thing which grants management provides is basically integration with other modules, other financial aspects. You have proper collaboration from different subledgers, so you can comply to the sponsors, the terms and conditions. You can do controls on the budgeting, billing, and then understand the reporting requirements and then report back to donors. So all these things are also part of that. Then, as I was saying, we have pretty dashboards available which will tell you the current spending status. So you can say that how much was my budget, how much was my commitment, and finally how much cost I have incurred on this project, right? So all these things are part of dashboards, or we can develop OTBI or even custom BIP reports to gather the requirements and then quickly report back to donors saying that you have given us 1 million. As of today, we have spent 600,000 and here is the spend details, right? Because when donors or sponsors give the money, some of the sponsors are very, very specific that they ask that you have to spend the money only in Ukraine, right? We are giving you the money, or some sponsors ask sometimes that you have to spend the money in Ukraine, in Kiev, and specifically on the people who are the residents of Ukraine, or specifically on the people who need shelters, or specifically on the people who would need some women empowerment kind of things, right? Or who would need some basic sanitation. Only spend my money to that kind of situation. So that is also possible. So in such cases, you have to report back to donors saying that, look, what we have done, we have spent the money only where you have asked us to spend, right? So there are multiple sponsors which say, which give money and whatever we can do, and which give money with some conditions. So all kind of sponsors are available in the world, right? The government organizations or the private organizations, everyone, they have some conditions. So depending on this funding, budgeting, and commitment details, you can easily report back to donors with the award dashboard functionality. Then we have something called OTBI, as I said, Business Intelligence Platform. So you can develop some creative reports. You can develop your custom dashboards. People from Oracle might already be aware of OTBI. But people who are not from Oracle, we have something called OTBI where we can develop the dashboards or custom reports. And if it's the simple ones, no coding or complex technical help is required. You can just simply drag and drop and create your own reports. I will show that as part of training in the end. Right, so that is one thing. And then the proper management of the grants is essential, and that is the reason how much revenue has been recognized, how much billing has been done, and what kind of reporting has to be gone to government agencies and non-profit organizations. All these proper management of grants is what the grants management system offers in Oracle. So that's what the last point is. Okay, so yeah, so continuing on the overview, we have these things available in the grants management. The first is award management, which we talked about already. Then the second is funding and allocation. So when you create an award, obviously you have to tell that how much fund we have received and how much we are allocating to projects. So in this case, I want to highlight one thing is basically you can receive, let's say, 1 million from, let's say, UK government to execute some project in Ukraine, and you decide to execute in, let's say, 3 projects. So you decide to spend that 1 million money which has been received from UK government to spend in via 3 different projects, just because that is easier to maintain and manage, right? So instead of budgeting and spending whole money across one project. System has complete flexibility to link one award to multiple projects or one project to multiple awards. So it's one to many, many to many, many to one, everything is possible. So it depends how the organizations want to execute the project on ground. There is no restriction on that. It's just the money has restriction, but you can decide how to execute and spend the money received from the sponsor. Then we have spending control, as we already spoke, that we have budgets and a system has built-in controls which will check the budget every time you will buy some item. It will tell you that funds check has been passed, budget is available, not available, warning, error, everything is inbuilt. So it is tightly coupled with the procurement module, and whenever you buy something in procurement, it will highlight the budget availability. Then we have award billing. So whenever you have sponsors, obviously sponsor will say that I will give you 1 million, but raise an invoice, right? Or some sponsors will say I will give you 1 million, but please do the work, raise invoice, then I will pay you. All these kind of stuff are possible that you have to raise the invoice. So invoice can be cost reimbursable, can be fixed price. Fixed price, you just raise invoice for some fixed amount. If it's cost reimbursable, then you have to do that based on the cost which you have incurred against a specific project, right? So if you are buying some, let's say some food items or medical items, and if it costed you, let's say $100,000, so you have to show that $100,000 in the invoice to the sponsor, then only they will pay you. So in such cases, we call it as cost reimbursement method. So you first incur the cost, raise an invoice, tell me how much and where have you spent the money, then I will pay you. Some people say that take my money and do whatever you want, right? So both the things are there. So both the things are supported by award billing. And then the last is intuitive reports and dashboards. As I have said earlier, we have dashboards which I will be showcasing specifically how you can see the statuses and the spending against each award. No? So yeah, so just to highlight something that for Oracle Fusion Grants Management, since it might sound that grants management can be implemented independently, but there are few prerequisites which are required from other subledgers, including the PPM project subledger, and few things are required from HCM, few things are required from GL. So basically, when we start implementing grants management, we have to take care of all these things. So grants management usually will never ever be implemented as an independent module because it's a part of project, right? And obviously, since the execution happens against a project, you have to take project also into the account. Okay. So few of the prerequisites I have written here just at the high level: user and security. So you have to obviously have some users depending on the access, and security depending on how the organization wants to implement. So there might be some users specifically who are grants administrators. There might be some users who are part of billing and revenue team, who are part of finance team, who are part of if they're part of finance team, then there will be separate access for them, which is called as grants accountant or budget accountant. There will be some people who will be part of the collections team, so collections access would be different. So depending on that, we have to set up the user and security. Then before we create the awards, we should have basic configuration of ledger, entity, business unit, organization. So everything is part of finance, and you create your ledger configuration, you create chart of accounts for accounting. People who are from Oracle background would be knowing what is chart of accounts. I'm not sure what you call in SAP and other ERPs, the accounting strings which we generally generate in Oracle, right? So it's the accounting string which has to be created and configured in the general ledger finance module. Then we have organization config. So you say that the departments are configured in HCM. So those departments we have to classify. HCM may have hundreds of departments, right? But not all departments will have project creation and all these things stuff happening. So we have to specifically see that which departments will be using projects. So we have to configure that departments or organizations in the project financial management, which is called as PFM. Then we have something called project foundation. So we have to create templates, types, and some control setup before we move to grants. We have to do something on the costing side, saying that how the cost will be imported to projects, what all systems can be involved. If there is any Excel integration required, we have to configure that. And since grants management always work on the sponsors who are giving the fund, we have to configure the configure the customers and the customer contract. So basically sponsors are nothing but the customers in the system. So we have to create first sponsors as a customer, and then customers by default, not by default, but customers will eventually become the sponsors in grants management. And then obviously, since we are raising invoices, we are doing revenue, we have to do some basic setups or configurations for project billing as well, which is the last topic. Right, so these are the prerequisites, which majority of them are part of project portfolio management, which we would not be covering in this training because it's a separate, completely independent and a big complex topic. So that's different, but yeah, I would be covering, and maybe we'll touch base on these configuration elements on the last day at a very high level. Right. So let's see the business process, end-to-end business process for grants management. So it all starts with receive and manage awards. So basically, as I said earlier, there's a process happening for negotiations and all other things, which might be for small organizations, it might be on Excel or any system. For big organizations, they usually use a separate CRM system, right, which is customer relationship management, which can be, as I said, Oracle CX Cloud or SFDC or Workday or whatever you can say, right? There are some specific sales cloud products available in the market, so these organizations use that for negotiations and tracking the opportunities. So once the opportunity gets converted to the award of the project, then we start the grants management process, right? So award creation, we receive and manage the awards. So basically in this case, first one is we create the awards with relevant sponsor name, relevant dates that I'm giving you the fund, but you have to execute this project within these dates, right? So let's say someone will say that you execute this before 31st of December this year. So the award start and end dates are also agreed between the company, the organization, and the sponsor who is giving the fund. Then we have projects. So when we got the fund, obviously for execution, as I said earlier, we would need projects. We create the project, we associate it to award from the grants work area. Then we have to allocate the funds. So let's say I have got 1 million funding from some sponsor, which is in the first block. I'm highlighting with my cursor. Now out of that 1 million, how much I want to allocate to project? So I have in the second block, let's say I have associated 2 projects. So 1 million award, 2 projects. Third block will tell me that out of 1 million, 600,000 goes to one project, 400,000 goes to other project. Right? So that's called as fund allocation to project. So these 3 blocks are basically talking about the funding. Then we have something on the 4th one, which is called as budgeting and cost control. So based on the fund allocation to the project, we do budgeting and cost control. So we create the budget. If let's say project number 1 is having 400,000, project number 2 is having 600,000. So we will create the budget against these projects. And then finally billing and revenue. So depending on the amount which has been received or which will be received, let's say later next year or in tranches, we will do the billing and revenue for this specific award. Then finally the last point is award performance. So you have to compare the visuals and dashboards and then compare the performance that my sponsor has given me 1 million fund, but how much I have spent, whether I'm going in right direction or not, whether I'm overspending whether I'm underspending, all these are part of award performance. And at any given point of time, from project manager's point of view or award administrator point of view, he or she has to look at award performance at regular intervals. Otherwise, you might overspend the money, right? Or maybe underspend, whatever be the case. So award performance is very, very critical because that is what will tell you how you are performing in the project execution. And then once you have got the work done, you will do the audit. You will see that whatever my sponsor has given me the conditions, whether they are done, whether they are properly executed or not, whether my funding status is still okay, whether my spend is in line with the budget, everything will be done as a part of closeout process. And once you see that everything is done, you will close the award. Right? So this is a high level end-to-end business process, including grants management. There are some parts of project control, some parts of project costing, some parts of project billing. So all these things are tightly coupled, and that's the reason I said earlier that you cannot independently execute grants management. You should have project sub-ledger as well to execute grants, and obviously other things as well, including the GL and other things. But project management is the key for this one.